the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Changes to the agenda.
Speak up.
Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, I believe there are.
I would like to remove from the consent agenda the nominations.
And internal transfers.
And yes, internal transfers.
Thank you, Christine. Second,
Second.
thank you, Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And was there something else relating to the counselor?
Let's do that now. Yeah, let's add in, oh, actually, we're gonna put the name into when we have the internal transfer and the nominations, we can put in that name for the counselor then. And
Okay.
then,
About that.
yeah,
But then also the hiring authority.
yeah. So why don't we do that when board matters?
Okay.
Is that cool?
Huh.
Yes, I am. Let's go into our first session of public comments. We will hold this for 15 minutes unless the board would like to continue it. And we'll have a second 15-minute time available after the session. Please watch for our policy and take note of that. If you have any questions on it, let us know. And our online audience, you'll let us know if there's anybody on the online audience. All right, public session is open. When you're come up and want to speak, just make sure you say your name and where you're from. You see Jaffrey Range resident. Good to go. Anybody in our online audience? Anybody wants to talk? Okay. We'll have time later. Let's go on to our student representative report.
Hi, everybody. I missed this smaller area a lot. It's way less intimidating than an entire gymnasium. So I'm happy to be in my little corner, but a lot of exciting upcoming events specifically for the middle high school. So we have that Museum of Science field trip that went out last week for 6th grade. I went on it when I was in 6th grade and it was so much fun. So amazing. We have the career fair coming up on Wednesday. We just got notified from our principal that there are going to be over 70 people coming in to talk about their careers and help us out figuring out our career paths in our lives and whatnot. Students are a little frustrated with the parking situation that's going to take place that day. Seeing as they will have to park down at Stadium Field as opposed to the parking lot up top. So that will be something to maybe keep on the radar. Band and chorus concert is coming up, the all district band. I know the band and chorus usually switch off between doing the all district. So one year chorus will do K-12, next year band will do K-12. Yeah, and then paint night got rescheduled again, but I'm hoping this one sticks because I'm really excited about it. It'll be April 23rd, 2025, hosted by yours truly, the senior class. I'm excited because I can actually go to this one as opposed to the planned Valentine's Day one where I would not have been able to attend. Free childcare, $25 a person, and you're getting led to do a really pretty painting of some tulips. And the Interact team is gearing up for their trip, their annual trip to the Dominican Republic. That'll be taking place over April break. And from what I hear, they are very, very excited to be helping out. It's always a big hit among the Interact group. They're really incredible. I'm not a member, so I'm not impartial. They're really incredible and they're completely determined every year. It's incredible to see. Prom is coming up soon. I'm personally very excited. It's a night in Hollywood themed, hosted by the junior class. We're gonna have it at the Woodbound. I haven't been inside their venue yet, so I'm personally excited. So is I believe everybody else who's planning on going. Tickets have yet to go up, but they will soon. So I'm very excited for that. There's also some community events, which I'm sure you're all very well versed in. I'm looking out to our community spectators, and I see them all everywhere. You know, they're all very involved within this community, and I love it so much. Senior stuff, I know a lot about that because I am one. We are working out all of the room and board situations for our senior trip. We're very excited to be going on it. We were able to financially come up with enough fundraising and whatnot over the last 4 years to have only made seniors pay $25 for the senior trip. And that is quite the accomplishment. We're planning on going to Connecticut and Rhode Island. It's an overnight. Very exciting. I think this is going to be a good one. Of course, I've never gone on another senior trip, so I have no frame of reference whatsoever. But it's very exciting. Q4 is kicking off as of today. And I know that a lot of AP courses have gotten out, and there's a lot of quarter-long classes. Those tend to be more the elective courses, and a lot of the fun courses. And then there's upperclassmen navigating their blocks where they can study or go out. It's all very exciting. And I would say that the weather is also exciting, but I can't really do that today. It was a very
Moving in the
unfortunate.
right direction.
And that's it.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Are you part of the group that will take the physics field trip to Six Flags?
Yes, that's the one thing I forgot about. Yes, so there is a Six Flags trip for all of the people taking physics this year. This is an annual thing put on by Mrs. Rolfe. And we figured out how to do group tickets so that it costs less money, so I'm very excited. I'm personally not a big roller coaster person, but I'm all for the experience and the learning. I love learning at amusement parks. It's my favorite.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for, is that year after year, we send the seniors off to the Six Flags, but now we actually have an opportunity to hear an official.
Yes, of course. And I will report on all the official physics of the day. And I believe that there are also some juniors in physics who also get to go on the trip, which is pretty cool in my opinion, because you get to be in a senior class and take the senior field trips and all that fun stuff.
I have not really a question or comment. I remember last year, a little bit later in the year, we started to talk about graduation, as you're talking about senior things, right? And it was never a school board issue, but I think it was a discussion that was out there
Yes.
about where do we have graduation? I think in the end, what I remember is that, I know we had it in the Pratt, and my recollection is that everyone that wanted to go was able to go.
Yeah.
As I remember it, but I think there was a little bit of discussion leading up to that for desire to be down there. Again, it didn't come to the board, but I guess I'm looking to you as a student representative to maybe kind of head off any of that sort of discussion and just have an open again, not a board decision,
Of
but
course.
I think I would encourage, you know, any sort of conversation between administration, and we're certainly interested in.
We provide an update.
Yeah, so I am also a member of the graduation committee, shocker, I know. So we decided to resort back to the pre-COVID era of hosting graduation at Franklin Pierce.
Oh.
We did this to ensure seating because I know that our graduating class is it's one of the larger ones. And there's a lot of big families, so we just really wanted to ensure a lot of tickets and a lot of space. And there was some initial discussion as to what we were allowed to do. I think that the preference would have been to go down to the track. It's one of those things that you see the people graduating 2-3 years before you doing something cool, and it's like, oh, that's what I should do. And it's really pretty for pictures too, but that's a personal bias. But we were provided the options of in the Pratt or at Franklin Pierce, so we decided on Franklin Pierce.
Good to know, thank you.
Anything else?
Any other questions? Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, superintendent's report, please.
So Jaden shared about Wednesday's career day, and it gets larger and larger every year, which is great. And I'm sure the parking is going to be unfortunate that day, which means I'll be walking as well. So that'll be good. Next week, actually, there's quite a bit happening next week, but just for the purpose of talking about the elementary schools, on Friday, April 18th, this is just one of the flyers that was developed through our partnership with Franklin Pierce University. There is going to be a showcase. It's a celebration of learning where in Spagnola Hall at Franklin Pierce University, I think about 40 of our elementary 4th and 5th graders from both Jaffrey Grade School and Ranch Memorial School are going to present their work that they've been doing, both over at RMS. There's a smaller cohort of students who have been focusing on writing stories with some of the college students over at Franklin Pierce University, and then they're going to be spending time in the studio over at Franklin Pierce recording their story and podcast that will be released as well. And then the Inquiry Scholars, which is over at Jaffrey Grade School during the school day, they have about 30 some odd individuals. The difference being one's an after-school program over at Ranch Memorial School. It's an interesting conversation because we're going to talk about access and ensuring more individuals being able to access and have, be involved. Is having it after school, deterrent for many individuals to participate. Whereas at Jaffrey Grade School, the 4th and 5th graders, they don't have to, but if they so chose, they can give up a lunch time and recess time. They obviously eat their lunch while it all happens, but at a certain, like once a week to work with once or twice a week to work with the college students, and then also Dr. Tom Bennett, who's a long-standing supporter of our school district, of course. And so they'll be putting together their posters, their presentations, everything, and all parents are going to be invited to that. So we're really excited about that display of learning, and that partnership again continues to strengthen between the two institutions. This is a very busy time for the New Hampshire legislature. And so there are way too many bills that are being discussed right now to discuss, but I'm going to highlight 3 or 4 of them tonight as they impact us, they impact every district from at least a financial standpoint as well. Some good, some not so fantastic. Just kind of explaining what is going on, what's likely to happen, perhaps, what's unlikely to happen. But if they've come this far, that means they're still very much in the game. And so this first one is about education freedom accounts. So it's Senate Bill 295. And this bill seeks to amend the existing EFAs, education freedom accounts. Other people would understand them as vouchers, educational vouchers, to take away the minimum or the minimum threshold of, or the maximum, I guess, minimum threshold of what people make in order to be able to qualify for an EFA, basically taking all of that out of the mix so that anyone who qualifies for an EFA, regardless of income, can have one. We know as a school board, after talking about education freedom accounts, that it's another spending of taxpayer dollars without any accountability, zero accountability, in fact. Not just do none of the students who take EFAs have any responsibility to show learning or demonstrate learning in any tangible way, any assessment sort of scenario. There is, even though there has been several requests for accounting of where this money goes, there is no audit, and there will be no audit of where this money is going, because it's all about privatizing this type of learning. So the goal here is to privatize, provide options and choice. No one really has, opposes option and choice, but options and choice with accountability is a much smarter and more economically sound way of going about doing things. The next one I'll talk about, and that's going to get a lot of traction. That's getting a lot of traction right now. So we'll see within the months to come how that's going to play out.
Ruben?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to just ask questions at the end, Lisa, or any discussion on this, or?
Let's ask questions at the end.
Okay.
This next one is one that I think that this particular school board is interested in, and this is Senate Bill 204. We certainly haven't been briefed on this or talked about with our association about this that much, but it is about trying to increase the threshold, at least using the state to do this, increase the threshold of reimbursable meals. We know that we have families with food insecurity, students with food insecurity, and so this seemingly is a positive bill. But anytime you're talking about providing more funding for something, it also means raising and appropriating those funds. So there's a lot of competition for money. No discussion really here about paying an adequate education to local public schools and helping that way, but there's a lot of money that's being discussed. And this is a very good thing. We've had our conversations here about how do we support families better? How do we support our learners here? And make sure that this is not a barrier to their participation in their learning. All of these, by the way, I bring this here, like April 15th, like for instance, there's a public hearing with the House Education Funding, April 15th, if you want to go to Concord, it's going to be at 10 a.m. The last one, the next hearing is on also April 15th at 10 a.m. So several things happening at the same time. If you were interested in going, if anyone was interested in going to Concord on the 15th of April. I believe the next one actually I'm going to show is also the 15th. Show that was 5, so I'm going to go to page 7. Okay, requiring catastrophic special education state aid funding. So House Bill 742. And this one, again, is seemingly something that, well, the governor's talked a little bit about this, about fully funding catastrophic aid, and it's over the last several years, it's been underfunded. Again, that's, the state never has actually done its obligation in this area when it comes to high expense out of district placements, when it comes to special education. And we have been receiving less and less and less revenue every year. Now, some of that is tied to education freedom accounts. We know very well how they're paying for education freedom accounts, and it's at the expense of the most vulnerable, fortunately. That has been we've had a very interesting last decade of economics in New Hampshire, and I think that given the fact that the current administration is saying we need to start saving and cutting and so forth, was because there may not have been the most economically smart approaches to doing things, and certainly not coming from the education department. But yet some of these unfortunate funding bills continue to go forward. This one does not seem to be an unfortunate funding bill for public education. Again, where is the money coming from? That's the question. April 14th at 10 a.m. is when the public hearing is on, or the House hearing is on this one. And then the last one I want to talk about tonight is one that we've been talking about before this even existed for many, many years. And this is universal public school choice. Now, other states do it. Universal public school choice, unlike EFAs, provides the accountability measures in place. When someone goes from one public school to another one, they still are held accountable to certain standards. They are still part of that assessment process. And the money is very clear where the dollars come from and where it goes. There's an accounting for it. Would expect that when that takes place. So this has been getting a lot of traction. It follows the same philosophy of choice. It just gives a different type of choice to people. And so the bill, House Bill 741, as it currently is, looks to take the law and say, rather than to require parents to ensure children attend their local public school, it's attend a public school. And rather than needing to be within a specific location, they just need to be within the state of New Hampshire. And all of the funding of this and all the processing of that has yet to be kind of ironed out. The concept, the last time I was briefed on this, was that the concept was that it would be funded by, if a learner from our district chose to go to Monadnock, then we would owe Monadnock 80% of our per pupil cost, which, and if someone, for instance, came from Monadnock who has a higher per pupil cost, we get 80% of theirs coming this way. Now, 80% of anyone's per pupil cost is way higher than anything we get from the state. So, but it does make a bit of a nightmare for budgeting and for sending money back and forth. Whereas like Massachusetts, they have public school choice. All the money is funded through a central location and then dispersed. That makes sense. That's efficient. We'll see how this goes. It has worked. I think I don't hear many people complaining about how it has happened over there. Massachusetts, while there may be some arguable differences within the states, between New Hampshire and Mass, whether one group does something better than the other, they certainly have a much more streamlined system on how education is done there, including their charter schools. So, which have been fairly successful over in that state. I can't say they've been overly successful in the state of New Hampshire as a whole. Certainly nationally speaking, the research would indicate that they're not successful entities. So that's those are some highlighted areas. They involve, like, if we were to be a school where kids decided that they wanted to come in here, that would greatly impact, in a good way, the tax base within this area. It is unfortunate, our recent conversations that we've had as a result of, budgets and so forth, but I still think there's a path forward, and we are still in a situation where we can continue to innovate. And our schools are, continue to be recognized for the great work that they're doing, and I think you'll see that we're gonna be recognized more in the near future.
What was that?
I just think that we'll be recognized more in the near future.
Can I ask a question about this? I probably should have asked this question a while ago, but it's just something I don't understand. So if a family wanted to homeschool their children
Mhm.
and they met the existing income cap, they fell within that income cap. Do they get a certain amount of money, that amount per child, or is it that one amount?
Well, once they accept an EFA, it would be, first of all, that's per child.
Yep. Okay.
But once you accept an EFA, you are no longer a homeschooled student.
Oh.
You're not considered, like, for instance, a homeschooled child can come here and take whatever class they want.
Right.
Right? And we do actually, because we keep all records of that, we can then get some adequacy aid for every course that the person takes.
Mhm.
We don't get anything for extracurricular and co-curriculars, but if they are an EFA recipient, then we can charge them for that. That is how we would do it. That is no longer, matter of fact, they are not permitted to come and play athletics or anything like that unless they agree to pay whatever we are going to charge for their participation in that programming.
But we don't do that now.
As of right now, we have not done that. We don't
think
have a
that's-
lot of EFAs coming our way anyway. I have a list of those in the area who get EFAs.
So there is an awareness. I know that
There's nowhere, we have an ability,
I
we have
know
an
that
ability
the
to know
law
who
says
has it and who
that they
doesn't.
need to report right to the local school district.
That is
so we have
correct.
that list.
Yep.
And I say that's, an interesting one to me for the board to know about going forward, is that
Mhm.
there is that difference between a homeschool student that has exactly equal rights. and when
Yes.
you accept the EFA, that's no longer the case, and just as an EFA can be spent on, soccer camp, ski lessons, it could be also spent on extracurricular activities. I know that other
That's correct.
districts do that. I
Yep.
don't believe we ever have. There's a good reason for that. I think we like to be as inclusive as possible, but I don't know. I think it's just something for the board to understand going forward.
Yeah.
If there's gonna be no limit there, we're being looked at, revenue is tight, right?
Yeah.
And just something to be aware of.
Yeah, I think that there's several things revenue wise that the board you would want to discuss, in the near future. Around things of this nature, looking at our policies, and around another topic that's on our agenda tonight as well, around usage of facilities. Especially since there are no MOUs in place.
So you know, you
Mhm.
Jaffrey?
It's not signed yet. There was an agreement to it, but there is not. It wasn't ripped up.
Any further questions on the superintendent's report?
Just,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, Marjorie, go ahead.
Okay, being someone who is a border jumper between Mass and New Hampshire, pretty much,
Mhm.
my whole life. I went to Linfield schools, my daughter went to Andover schools.
Yeah.
And Andover recently had a thing where we wouldn't take kids on a tuition basis coming into our schools. But if there was a child that, let's say they moved from another town and they wanted to go to the school in the town they used to live in, we would have to pay for transportation. And I can see in the small print there that if a child from this town decided that they wanted to go to another town, we're gonna have to pay for that transportation. And I know it gets very expensive.
Right now, transportation is enormously expensive.
Right,
Yes,
right.
so, the language, I mean, the concept of this may very well go through. By the time it actually becomes what it becomes, some of these things may have been cut out, like transportation.
Yeah.
you gotta have systems to be able to pay for these things.
Right.
That's right. So I think you bring up a really important point.
Yeah, and I mean, in Linfield, when I was in school a million years ago, we used to have Metco students come from Boston to go to our
Mhm.
school, and they'd have to be on the bus for hours because they were in traffic.
Yes.
And, you know, we helped pay for, the town helped pay for their transportation,
Mhm.
but it was just a very, not a good setup for anybody.
Yeah. And that approach already exists for what we call McKinney-Vento. So for individuals who are homeless, and so or considered to be homeless. And there are, definitions of what that looks like. And so almost always do we have a cost sharing agreement between communities when that takes place, because when you're in that situation,
Right,
parents already have full choice
right.
of any public
That's the
school.
sort of situation in Massachusetts where I've seen it happen.
And so that's what this would be doing, saying basically,
Yeah,
you know,
if you want to go
anyone.
back to your old school.
yeah.
Yeah.
It can be a positive thing for a school district, or it can be a burden. So it's all depends on the community's capacity of being able to make itself be the one that someone would want to desire to be at. Yep.
I would just say that very applicable to us, and I'm not sure the exact status is that House Bill 675 with the possible spending cap being put into place. I think
Yeah.
for our particular situation where we're, our spending has been significantly cut, the bill proposed ties any increases that a school district would be able to make to metrics such as inflation rates and enrollment, right? So a 1-year jump in a budget given would be tied to metrics and not strictly what the board and taxpayers voted for. Maybe that's a bit of an oversimplification, but to me, it's certainly one to watch.
It could be overruled, I think, is
Yeah.
what their current language, by a 2/3, a supermajority.
Yeah,
Which for a lot of rural communities would be unlikely.
yeah, I think for our particular situation, that's
That'll be
a
tough.
real tough one to watch when we're
And
looking
since
at a cut.
every
if we wanna-
community that had this on their ballot turned it down, the state coming in and doing that and enforcing it has a sour taste in the mouth of many.
Do you have a sense of where that bill is and how much,
It's got as much traction as the rest of these right now. And the concern is that some of these are going to be actually just put right into the budget itself. So,
Yeah, that one's passed the House and it's in
Yeah.
committee, so
Yeah.
waiting to go to the Senate.
yeah, that's a very dangerous one for this district.
right?
In immediate, right?
Mhm.
The immediate danger
And
there,
do you have the number on that one?
675.
675.
House. Get a sense.
Senate will have its crack at it. Yep.
Right, anybody else? Let's move on to the consent agenda. Take a motion. What we're dealing with is manifests accounts and budget transfers for the Kelly Day School and interim healthcare. And we are also dealing with the stipend. Anybody want a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Thank you, Christine, a second.
I'll second that.
Sandra. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, vote passes 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 6, 0, 0. Let's go to the nominations first. Is there a?
I'll make a motion to approve the nominations for Seth Farmer to CMHS ELA Social Studies teacher. And then there's a list of JREA nominations. I don't think I have to read them all, do I?
Nope.
Nope.
And now do you want to put your counselor in now to the nominations?
And there's a counselor who accepted today to come here. We've been without one of our school counselors here at the Conant Middle High School. all year long. This individual is a certified school counselor in New Hampshire. Her name is Theodora McDonald,
Okay, and I
to start on May 5th.
have Theodora McDonald to be a school counselor beginning on May 5th.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Aye. So that passed 5-0-1. Internal transfers, anybody open to motioning?
I move that Amanda Wiley go from CMHS to STEM teacher to science teacher, and Jane Chandler, CMHS grade 7 teacher to math teacher.
Sandra, and second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Christine. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Myself? So that passes 5-0-1. Thank you. On to the minutes. I believe all of us were here all of March, except for Judy, you would have come in on the 17th, I believe. That sound right?
That's right.
Yes.
Okay, so I would say abstain.
I will abstain.
Third one, and then the others. So we'll do the individually. A motion for the March 3rd minutes, please.
I move we accept the March 3rd minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you, Chris. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain? Aye. Great, vote passes 5-0-1. Want to keep running, Sandra?
Oh, yeah. I move we accept the March 17th minutes as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Christine. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Vote passes 6-0-0. Interrupt me if there is discussion, okay? Next.
Keep going.
Yep.
I move we accept the March 24th minutes as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Judy. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? I think the vote passes 6-0-0. Action items. The first action item up that we have is the local elected leaders school funding letter. So if you think of putting that in, I've asked John if he consider helping us through this.
Okay, I think we've all had a chance to take a look at this. It's basically a letter summarizing some of what we've talked about tonight, what the superintendent talked about, the increases in funding for some things that do not come directly to our school districts and which are having a negative impact on our funding for special education and on our local taxpayers who are being asked to fund more of the education costs instead of having the state make some changes as they have in the past to alleviate some of the costs in our lower income communities. This is developed by the New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Association. It's a very reasonable letter. It doesn't condemn anybody, but just points out some of the inequities, and it asks the governor to look at some of the recommendations that have been made over the past 5 years to address school funding in the state of New Hampshire for public schools. And it does give a couple of examples of reports and suggestions that have been made, including the 2020 Commission to Study School Funding and several other subcommittee recommendations that have been made in the past through the legislature. And so what this does is to ask the governor to take these recommendations into account, to study them and to come up with some solutions. And I believe it was pretty much the consensus of the board the last time we took a look at this, that this is sort of a minimum of what we should do. And we decided to put it off while we were working on getting our budget for next year in line. So
We have in our audience, Allison Marr, who has been bringing it to the board as well. And I wondered, she has some specific requests as far as actual meetings with people. And so I wondered if the board would be okay if we invited Allison to speak a little bit in addition to what John said, to give us a little more action items as well. Would that be amenable to you guys?
Yes.
Okay, Allison, would you mind?
Microphone.
Sorry to put you on the spot. We never.
No, you're
not
okay.
talking about this.
I'm here, so why not? So I spoke with Casey Neal, who is from the New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project, and we did a Zoom. She was really helpful, and she said that they've often partnered with school boards and school districts to do a local presentation to kind of give some more feedback or give some more background around the project and get some feedback about kind of concerns, questions that people may have. And she said it's usually helpful to have you sponsor it, just because people know that it's a legitimate source of information and it gives them a venue to be able to host it in. So we were hoping to do something in the Pratt. And originally she had said she could get something as soon as like later this month, but knowing that we kind of got sidetracked for a little bit there, I think she's open to whenever it works for you guys. They just need like a 4 to 6 week lead time to kind of advertise and get information out. They do require, they have like a Zoom sign up. So, or not a Zoom, I think it's like a Google form that you can sign up, but they like to make sure that they have enough representation there. So they look for, I think, at least 40 people to be able to attend, which I think we could definitely get that. So if you're amenable to that, I think it would be great to kind of maybe think about some dates and look at times that might work, and then we can kind of go from there.
Any questions for Allison?
Well, no, not a question, but I think it's wonderful. And I remember back when, our first term on the board, when we were discussing whether or not we should sign on, excuse me, sorry, to the lawsuit, the Conval's lawsuit. We had talked about how we should actually be educating our community more about what's happening, about adequate funding. And whether or not we did that is questionable, but this would be an excellent opportunity to help provide some education to the community, to ourselves. So I'm very interested in pursuing this.
So thank you, Allison. That's awesome. So then would action tonight, correct me if I'm wrong, would action tonight be physically signing the letter, each of us? And then requesting the superintendent to work to schedule the Pratt for a time that as many board members can be there as well. And I will absolutely, be part of that. But so those two action items, signing the letter and asking the superintendent to put together a schedule that we could find a community time to inform people. Does that sound right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, makes sense.
cool.
yeah, that sounds great. I think we really saw that we really have a duty to educate people on what's happening with funding. And it doesn't have to be a partisan discussion. It's just what are the facts and how are they affecting all of our communities and our community. And so I think it's a service to the community to do it. Be great.
Cool. Thank you, Al, for bringing that, to our faces constantly. I really appreciate that this is the message. This is so important. All right, the next action item, I believe we already took care of. Okay, so we don't need that one. There is a request to waive facility fees for Ringe Recreation Department basketball camp, June
Lisa,
23rd through the 27th.
could I just ask a question? We're gonna ask Ruben to try to set something up with the School Funding Fairness Group. Is that right? What about on the letter? Do we need to vote on that to send it off, or how do we do that?
think we just sign it at the end of the meeting. You have the letter, right? You have a
Yeah.
copy?
There's actually, I don't think we all got it, but most of us got a email with a Google form option to sign it. So maybe I have the email and it's got a few of us on it. So maybe if somebody wants to go into the form and sign it for at least the people that are here, right? Or we could do it individually. I think we all
You
did.
could take a motion and
We all got the
all the
email,
people
so-
who voted yes can have their names in it,
Sounds good.
if you'd
All
like.
right, so I would make a motion then that we do that, that we.
Second.
Done.
Thank you, Christine. Awesome. Any more discussion? So the understanding is that we would be giving, by saying yes, then we would be giving, let's say, John, the permission to sign our names to a single form. I think that's more, I don't know. I think that says something more when it says Jefferson School Board, here are our names on one thing.
Agreed.
But so, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstains? Great, thank you, John. Great. That's a 6-0.
And to your point, Lisa, not to prolong things, but what you just said, if you were to, oops, if you were to scroll down here, you can see, for
Yeah,
instance,
we can go
Dover,
there, yeah.
all of those, board members would be there. So what would happen is you'd see Jeffrey Ringe and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 board members underneath that. So you can see that some of them have 1, some of them have 2. Plymouth has like a zillion, so they've got a big board, but that's what it would look like.
All right. Thank you, guys. All right, back to the request to waive facility fees. Any discussion? I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to waive the facility fees for Fringe Recreation Department basketball camp using the RMS gym from June 23rd to June 27th, 2025.
In a second.
Second.
Thank you, Judy. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? So passes 6-0. And now we're-
Lisa, before we go on, I guess I just want to comment. I know it doesn't make sense that we're saying we don't charge for these facilities. Because if we do, we're taking out of one pocket and putting into the other. But it's a little bit annoying that we don't have a memorandum of understanding. To the point that I'm thinking, they don't want to sign it, then let's start charging.
I would recommend that we at least look at the policy. And I would charge for the facilities and get the revenue that we need in order to take care of what's going on. And I concur with what you just said.
I mean, it's been months. Months with this memorandum of understanding, and Ringe ripped it up, and Jaffrey, I don't know whose desk it's sitting on, but it's not getting done.
I agree 100%. I would like to, before we do that, I would like to notify
Mhm.
so that they can adjust their fees accordingly. Because they're gonna have to bring up the prices that they charge for these camps and the best sports programs. If we start charging, people absorb the cost, but that's gonna be the impact.
So this is a big question that that we grappled with for months
Yeah.
in facilities and in policy. And in finance. We brought this to everybody, and we brought in community leaders to be part of this conversation. And this is a very double-edged sword because these are our kids that we are charging for the use of the facilities. These are our families. This is a small community. These are small communities, and these are resources that our kids are benefiting from. And so it's these departments, but they're serving the kids who walk these halls every day. And so this was a very big question, and it's absolutely not something that we can do a blanket statement on in one meeting. And certainly not with seasonal preparation times that they have to do. So there's summer programs that are being registered right now that we haven't seen much of what they're gonna be asking us yet. And that's part of the issue, is that oftentimes, like, this is June, but we've had them where in a couple of weeks, we want to be using your property. So there is a lot of communication that we had hoped would happen after grappling with it with these people for months. That has not happened. And so absolutely, we want to look very closely at this again. But I'm wondering if this needs to be a second run with our committees to come back to the board with here is our fall plan kind of a thing. Because again, like, they're already in summer registration. And, you know, there's places already filled up. Like, this is, even though we haven't seen it, we know they're going to be used. So this might be, what you're about to see when we talk about the committee assignments is some suggestions that I have on how we move forward with committees and setting goals that the board has input on. And I'm thinking that this might fall into that realm where we make these decisions with, this group right here, there's too many other people involved in these decisions, and they absolutely directly affect our kids. So we just want to be cautious how we, I think we're all in agreement of the frustration.
Yeah.
We have to be very cautious how we move forward. So what I would suggest is that we approve this tonight and approve the summer ones that come, and hopefully they'll come right away. Yeah, they're hearing, but we definitely need to look at what's going to happen in the fall. And how we're utilizing things and how we're charging. This is a big conversation. Does that seem like a direction?
I do agree with that. I think one of the good things about this board, I think we have been, thoughtful and careful, and worked with our community members and stakeholders. We've done things. I think, a reactionary measure would be to say, you don't sign the MOU, we're charging now. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I agree with your assessment, Lisa, that we, continue to move forward and act in the way that we always have in the past, and partner with and try to come up with a solution that works for today's environment, right? Which is different than last year's environment. And, my initial thoughts are that it's that, if we need to consider if these programs align with the mission of our district. My thought.
And the practicalities of
Correct.
what our district has to face.
And I think that's a larger discussion where we want to bring people in and hear the conversation rather than just, we have the absolute authority to make that decision today by ourselves. I agree with you in that I recommend we don't do that. We continue to seek feedback, but with that in mind, that's an important discussion to be had, and the situation's different. Disagree, Christine?
I don't even know who we would invite in, because there's the people that we've been speaking with and we developed the MOU with, right? We move forward with these groups of people. And then the MOUs weren't signed. So I'm very hesitant to start that process again, all the while waiving fees. And I've been in the gym when there's been basketball programs or karate programs and things are not clean to our standards. I know, right? I know the impact that happens when we have outside groups. We absorb the cost. So I understand what everyone's saying. I get it. My own children have used these wonderful programs. I've struggled with the costs myself, so I get all the impact. But I am not willing to just start over with rose-colored glasses on. It's going to be a very different discussion if we're doing this with, I think I would like to say, if we don't come up with an agreement, a signed agreement by a certain date, then we will charge or something like that. I mean, there's got to be repercussions. This cannot continue. This was a gigantic waste of our time.
Yeah. And what you just said, and John, I just want to, there's just a statement you just said that I actually believe needs to be our motto. It's going to have to be a very different discussion.
Yeah.
When we talk about our board goals, there's things in our education committee we have to have different discussions. In our finance committee, we have to have different discussions. And I'm really adamant that when we start looking at these assignments, that we're changing some models. So I completely agree with you as being ground floor, being part of all these conversations with all these community people. Right now, it feels yada, yada, yada. I get it. So, nope, I'm not saying we have to start fresh. I'm saying cutting right now, we can't.
Yeah.
Like, this is, yeah, but this is absolutely what we need to look at very closely. Thank you, John. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate the discussion. I think that Lisa, you made a very good point. We don't want to react in a sense of frustration. And we should recognize that there are things that are already planned by the Recreation Department. However, I think it's also time to put them on notice. And there are two separate issues. One is that we have a need for and a right to expect a memorandum of understanding, and they haven't done their work. So I think one thing is to say, you know, unless you're willing to do what's necessary to develop that memorandum, which we've put effort into, that, you know, you can't expect us to continue to allow you to use the facility. A second point, and I think this is one that we want to take more time with, is whether going forward, we do need to charge in situations where we didn't need to charge before because of our budget situation. But they're kind of separate questions. And I think that this is the right time, though, to notify both towns that without a memorandum of understanding, we're going to have to stop approving, you know, in the future. We're going to approve right now. And if you say for the summertime, you think that we should do that, I would back that, but put them on notice. That's not going to continue unless we have a MOU.
That's my feeling. And then when I look at this, I look at this little particular week. This is when school's done. This is when our janitors and our custodians could be doing extra work in the building. And no, they're cleaning up after a group that's using our building that tore up the memorandum.
Right. And that's not right.
No.
Well, and to be fair, Dan Bemis, the Recreation Department chair or head, was very cooperative through the development of that memorandum, and he was not an individual who tore that up.
Right, that's the frustrating part, because that's who we would have the conversation with.
Lori Radiola and Dan Bemis were very good partners in working on this project with us.
And I don't know the appropriate way to communicate that, but I think the larger community should know that this is the situation, that the town administrator and the rec department director have worked hard to collaborate, but that the selectmen haven't done their job. And, you know, again, I don't know the best way to communicate that, but that should get out.
I think Charlie took an action at the last meeting to address this.
That's right. He did say he was gonna
It's not here.
do something.
But
So
for an update from him.
we do have options here. I'm hearing a compromise. We don't want to give a very short notice to programs that are already
Right.
registered.
Right.
The plans, even if we haven't seen, you know, that any sign that
Right.
they're recognizing us, that's not fair. These are our kids. If you want to make a motion saying, while we are investigating the best route forward financially for fiscal and facility responsibility, while we're doing that, we could have a motion saying, notify the rec departments, because those are the two main ones that we're looking for, that starting for any fall programming, if we don't see an MOU, then we will be charging. We could do that tonight. That's giving plenty of time. We can still have the conversations. That's following what we wanted and what came out of all these meetings. It's not going backward. It's not starting fresh. And it gives us time in committees to say, do we want to be charging Boy Scouts? Do we want to be charging karate? What do we get in return for these things? And how much damage are they doing in comparison? Are there ones that we're letting go, that it comes back to that bigger question of rec department programs where they're charging and we're not seeing any of that money. You know, that's another piece of this. So there's a lot to look at again. But if you want to make that motion to give a timeline and say fall programming, MOU or pay, we can do that tonight.
Do we want to hear what Charlie found out?
That's what I was gonna recommend.
Yeah.
Charlie took the action to address it. I'd like to hear what
He
has to
found
say.
out.
Otherwise, I'd probably be comfortable with that.
Then let's look at that next meeting.
Okay.
Okay,
This is the benefit of being on the committee, because I can tell you that my gut reaction is very different than, and it's probably much more responsible to proceed this way. That's why we have committees.
amen. All right, so, let's go, okay, so, the motion has been made and seconded, having a clue who, Wendy, you're on that one. And so all in favor for Ringe Rec Department?
Aye.
Abstain? Or, sorry, this is a good conversation. I'm heated up too.
I think we already voted on it, but I brought it up as
Yeah,
a
we
point of
did.
discussion after.
Oh, that's right. You said a comment.
Okay.
All right, that makes good
Point.
sense now. Let's go on to number 10. Okay, so in absence of the policy committee meeting, we can all still, like, if there's policies that we need to address now or feel that they're important to address now, they can come before the board. We can vote for them as a first and second reading. We don't have to wait for the policy committee to say, "Woo, we have to do this." So because the conflict of interest policies came up to all of us in the last couple of weeks, and it was clear that ours was not matching what the New Hampshire School Board Associations has in terms of what the intent of this recommended policy is. I wanted to bring them forth tonight for review and for first reading in recommendation that we accept the newer version than the older. The newer version. Excuse me. All right. The newer version of the sample policy notes notes that the conflict of interest comes in with a fiscal responsibility. So people who are in business, so and getting contracts. Interestingly, I believe it's here that it talks about, or in another one that kind of relates to it, it talks about school board members getting paid for work. And apparently, even a part-time employee can be a school board member. And, so somebody who's coaching, say, could take the stipends. It's not a conflict of interest. You just can't be a salaried employee and be a school board member, which I thought was pretty interesting. I don't know if it was on this or on one of the RSAs that I was reading on here, but, and then the nepotism part comes down here. Thank you. All right. And again, this was much more reasonable. I will say that for me, it's missing a piece, and I wanted to have this conversation with you guys because it actually came up and it was so uncomfortable and I could find nothing about it. And what this is, so this is, let's say that in our nominations tonight, that there was a family member, a close family member of one of us on the nominations. This is saying then you should recuse yourself. Okay. For employees that have been here, that's not an issue. For new ones, it becomes a little more sketchy. So you're just you step away. The piece that this doesn't talk about, and I couldn't find it anywhere, was when we have a hearing for an employee or a student where there's something very serious and we're actually looking at letting people go or removing students from our community. I'm seeing nothing saying a board member who has a direct relation in that case needs to recuse themselves. And it's very uncomfortable. Like, that's, so I couldn't find any legal anything.
You know, I think that comes under general legal principles of what would reasonable people say?
Our attorney would sum up all of this as, first of all, New Hampshire is a small state. And you quite frequently have people on the board who are related or friends or with a variety of individuals. That the line has to do with, judiciary and executive roles. So for instance, it was brought up by a member of the community about the board making decisions on a budget and so forth. That's an executive decision. That's for the good of the whole and so forth. There is no conflict of interest within that at all. And our attorneys would indicate that that's the case. It's different when you're just making a decision on someone's employment when they're near you. So if whether it be hiring or firing, that's where the conflict can come into place. And that's where it's tied closely with nepotism.
Yeah, I think it needs to be really clear and I guess I'll recommend that we that not approve this right now, but maybe take some time to think about it. I think those lines need to be clear, because I know certainly, I've received some feedback on the very things. My wife is a part-time, non-benefit employee at RMS, right? That suggested that, I may have had a conflict voting for the budget. I've done it the past few years. I can say that certainly in any sort of, employment type conversations around that, I always, did and always would recuse myself from any of that. I think it needs to be clear that there is some kind of implicit trust that when we elect our school board members, that they are going to be making, decisions for the benefit of the school. And just because there may be some connection there, I know that it's a lot about appearances, but
I have to chime in.
yeah, go ahead.
Back when I lived in Peterborough, 3+ years ago, we had a select board member who gave themselves a really cushy job with a big salary, and the town went wild over that. And she moved out of town, and it was just, there was no clear policy about what anybody was supposed to do. And the townspeople didn't like the town lawyer. It was just a mess, and they still talk about it. So I just know that, everybody here is nice, and it seems like you're all like the community, you all get along great. But oh my gosh, when you get two factions in a town that like one side is like, oh, she's giving herself special favors, and then the other side's like, no, she's doing us a great favor because she's on the select board and she has a job, so she doesn't have to ask permission to do things. And it was just, so I know it can get really contentious.
No, I agree. And that's why I think it needs to be absolutely clear to make, certainly be comfortable going forward. I want to be able to vote on the budget every year. I think that's like the critical decision that a school board member and chair at the time, would need to have input on. And I do agree with you, Lisa, that perhaps, because there have been some other situations, right? I have 3 students in the school. Sometimes we talk about things that may impact your students. So maybe there doesn't need to be the extreme level of detail, but at least an understanding among the board and the public as to where those lines are.
I think we should. I think we should really look at that. I couldn't find anything. And so as a recommended policy, this is something we can edit this. We can make this what we believe we want the community to see. So absolutely, so this is first reading. So if there's edits, or like if somebody sees language that you really feel like this is something we should bring to before the board to make this more comprehensive or more transparent, I don't know, but this is something I wanted to just bring it before you guys for a conversation.
And this is from NHSBA, correct?
It is.
So NHSBA several years ago, because we had this conversation with their board members, because there was a question about conflict of interest. And the response to us was that it's a conflict of interest if the individual himself or herself believes there's a conflict of interest. And if the person does not believe there's a conflict of interest, then there's no conflict of interest in New Hampshire and the way the laws are written.
Yeah.
So that's a legal approach to saying that you can always make things different than.
So then as a board, could we write, if the board as a majority believes there's a conflict of interest?
That's a good question. I don't think so.
It was up to the
I
individual.
think it's a personal decision, and I think the kind of situation that Judy described, that's where those things arise, because I'm gonna bet that in that situation, there were lots of people saying, it is a conflict, but the person didn't want to hear it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. It was very dramatic.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, because these things, they come up in little ways too, not just big things like, there's the collective bargaining agreements.
Mhm.
Where, for instance, when.
That was the
my-
context of our original
Yeah,
inquiries, yep.
My daughter is a paraprofessional at RMS. If that contract was up for negotiation, I would not be on that committee and I would not vote. I would recuse myself from voting for or against it. I just wouldn't participate in that. When the sixth grade took a field trip to the Museum of Science with my son on that bus, I voted for it because it wasn't for my child, it was for the school, it was for the sixth graders. Right, so there is that level of difference of
Mhm.
when it comes to financial matters, you step away, but when it's really, you're talking about for the benefit of
Yeah,
field trip.
and I would like have another example of, right, negotiating a contract with an administrator, right?
Right.
That administrator is technically maybe somebody's superior. Right, but if you're on the school board, kind of one of your key duties is to do that. So I think we just need to have a clear policy, be transparent about it, certainly with each other and the public. That's the expectation. So I do thank you for bringing this up, Lisa, because I can say that certainly I don't feel like any of us here have anything to hide on the matter. And we need to be clear and transparent about it.
All right. Then discussion item, let's go to taking a look at next year's calendar.
Okay, so we do not need to make a decision tonight. It would be good to make a decision at the next one relative to next year's calendar. There was input from a variety of sources. It kind of, the final touches were put into place after Conval, Messinic, and this group, us, met. And so you would see that the recommended start date is on August 28th, which aligns itself with other years. It's not that far off, maybe a day off. And then that means that the weeks prior to that, we'd have the new teacher training, then a few days prior to for opening of school, unencumbered days, things of that nature. Really, Labor Day is very early this year, so you start your 2 days, then your 3 days, then all of the day, or I guess it's 4 days, 2, 4, and 5. It's a very similar calendar to what we have this year. Difference being, if you look at December, it's not a 2-week off. At that point in time, when we meet with Conval and with Messinic, we have to be by law within a certain number of days because of our CTE programming. So we have to align as many days as possible. We have to make sure that we don't differ by 10 or more. And so we are probably differed by about 3 or so here. Maybe depending on what happens with one of the conversation pieces I'm going to show you tonight, it could be a little bit more than that. But we all agreed that we take the state suggestion, which is go to school 22nd and 23rd, make the 23rd a half a day, and then have the rest of the couple weeks off for that holiday right there. Hoping to have a professional development day in January, which we haven't had for a year or two. But it's been asked to have something and not have such a large gap. March, those 2 days, that's in part because we've had that. That's not, the other districts don't necessarily like that. We've done it. And it gives us an opportunity for some continuity, but it's also one of those days has to do with the fact that they're voting. And so we have school shut down on one of those days. And so rather than having the kids come Monday and then not come on Tuesday, that's the idea behind that. We have a similar concept in November. This one's a little more iffy. And you need to think about this, is that the 11th is Veterans Day, so no school. The 10th, we could have our parent-teacher conference day that day. We would typically have that parent-teacher conference day on the voting day, similar reasons for, because our policy states it, and that's November 4th. But that means that we have 2 weeks in a row where we have a Monday, no Tuesdays, and then the rest of the week. So you get 2 weeks of broken up time frame as opposed to a long weekend for kids and just some better continuity. We would need to not have voting happen in our schools on Tuesday in November the 4th. Now, I'm recommending personally that we go this route because it matches up with Conval and with Scenic, and they have no problem with this. Matter of fact, they are not going to whatever happens on the 4th isn't going to be impactful to them. They can get around it. I don't know what vote is happening. It's got to be a very minor situation.
There's no election.
There's no election.
There's no votes, there's no election.
There's nothing on that day whatsoever. So I think that as long as, even if there's something minor going on, they can figure out a different way to do it.
There's no election.
There's no election.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not an election day this year.
All right, perfect. And that works out really well. Good. So
There's no little votes.
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So we don't have to worry about it. So that would work out then right there without that. So, but typically that would be an election day. You can just take a look at that again, very similar to what we've had. Take the same days off in February and in April as the state suggests, which is the same as, again, Conval. I think one of the communities in the area goes back and forth between the week that aligns with.
I thought that all in New Hampshire was always like 1 week away from Massachusetts, because my friends from New Hampshire and my family could never go on vacation together. I thought they all just made sure they weren't the same week, that they were abutting each other, but.
Some go back and forth.
Different
They're
ones.
not always the same.
No.
Okay, wow, all right.
Could you please scroll down to December? That's mean, and no, they should not go to school on the 22nd and 23rd. We should have those days. That would be awful. Here, come back on Monday and then don't come back for 2 weeks. No.
Well, Monday and Tuesday gives you some opportunities to get on the half day to have a party. It is again, if we were to decide differently, that would be 2 days different from the other two, who I think are definitely not wanting. They had a very different experience. They had very different communication about this than we did. I actually went in hoping for the 2 weeks. That was my proposal.
Yeah.
But
I think we had great response from the community having 2 weeks off this year.
Did we have great response from our hourly employees?
anytime that we have days off like that, it produces some more difficulty for hourly employees.
Yeah.
Hourly employees of the district or parents that,
Of the district.
of the district,
Mhm.
right? Okay, because I know things have gotten easier for working parents, but back when my daughter was school age, I would have to work until like the afternoon of the 23rd.
Right.
Yeah, so and employers can be kind of nasty about that. And I've never been, since I'm older, I haven't been hourly, but they still, even salary, that they used to be kind of, begrudging you that time. So,
I got a couple texts that indicate that they had not heard of a lot of complaints around from hourly employees. Doesn't mean that there wasn't concern, but that there wasn't a verbal concern or vocal concern. So that's something to, consider, and we can, change that if that's something that we would want to change. We have the ability to do so. We have that many days to play with. Once we do that, that does change the end of the year. And that's, I think, why the other schools, for different reasons, want to get out sooner.
That's even worse in June. They go to school for one day and then they get out. I mean, if potentially there were no snow days, they'd go to school on Monday, if that would be it. That wouldn't happen.
oh, and Monday the 15th, that would be one day.
Yeah,
There's always a snow day.
Oh,
Almost.
I know, but there's
It's rare.
climate change.
Two, that would, we have to talk about the final day of school this year. So that's just, all that would do is just shove it to the 17th.
Would it be possible to get further input from people? I don't mean a big school-wide survey, but is there some way
Yes,
to get
there
further
is
input?
a way to get further input, and there's a clause inside the JREA contract that talks about further input after we've done all of this. So there's another round. We've already had some input, but going back. And then also, we can discuss it with other groups as well.
I think I would like to see specific, I think everything else aligns great with everything, but
Yeah.
I would like to see specific input on the December 22nd, 23rd. And if that was taken off, then what that looks like on the June side.
Okay.
So would you rather have your days off in December than get out of school earlier in June? Serious discussion.
I confess at Monadnock, I was very surprised at the results of the same conversation that the staff that you're talking about, I work with the theater and the opera, and that they were very much looking forward to the 2 weeks off. And that was.
There aren't always opportunities for that. It's just that this is a very similar situation this past year. And so it's your second opportunity in a row for that. The response from the people who spoke with me internally to the organization said it was just a breath of fresh air to have all of that. Because you're talking about 3 weekends. And a time of rejuvenation. From a standpoint of illnesses, it's really good to, it's the same reason why we have February break and why I wouldn't go to one, March thing. It's just, you got to cleanse out the facilities. There's been so much illness in the past couple of years. I swear we just have it's crazy. The level
Cesspool of germs.
yeah, it's just been different in the last few years since COVID. Very different than what it was. Yep.
All right. So we'll go back and get some more input.
Get
Anybody
some
else have a
information.
discussion on it?
Come back with a second draft. Yeah. All right.
Next.
Last day of school for this year. So if we bring up the this year's calendar, let me go and find that. We're in links, calendars, annual calendar, school district. Yeah. Okay.
Input now.
Yeah, there are people watching. And they like that the conversation is being had. So, and there's some, reasons for that. So this is this year's calendar, and so there's a couple things. One, I think we can say that graduation's on the 13th. And so that they can make sure that all can happen. That's
oh no,
already.
Friday the 13th is their graduation.
Yeah, that's why we're having it over at FPU, so. The last day for the rest would have been the 17th. We have had 2 days. And so we can consider putting those 2 days back. We do have the necessary number of hours for our learners already without putting those 2 days back. I will say the same question about hourly staff is there when you don't have those. They are contracted for two of those days. We don't have them at one point. We typically add them at the end. We have typically we've not always added everything back because sometimes we've had many days. However, we've erred on the side of saying that education is important and that missed opportunities for education is not what we stand for as a school community, even though we have the ability hours wise to just absorb it. There is also, depending on, we have not had a lot of this conversation, but I'm putting it out there that there's June 19th. So that's Juneteenth is within this conversation and is something the board can have a conversation with as we consider this. So what would happen would be if we went for 2 more days, which would be on June 19th. Then the last day for educators would be the 20th, which would be that Friday, not going into that following week. If we stayed the way it is right now, then I mean, we could still have people work without kids here on 2 days. It's definitely, there's things, there's the teacher. It's not an issue with the teacher contract. It's more of an issue with the JRSA contract because you have exempt and non-exempt employees.
So in the situation where we ended on the 17th, would you, I'm just going to try and interpret what you're saying. There's 2 contractual days that the JRSA employees are missing out on that you would have to pay them for anyways, or no? We would have to address the 2 days. I don't know whether we have always negotiated and our practice is days worked, days paid, not pay for. There's only been one time when that maybe has been adjusted, and that was the time of COVID. The first going out with that spring. So there's some things to consider. What would you like for your last day of school for kids? It can be the 17th. It could be the 18th. You could add a day. And then, then again, you'd have that, Juneteenth piece, which there are individuals in the community who celebrate.
It's not a federal holiday.
It is not.
No, just checking.
Is it? I think it was made a federal holiday.
Yeah, it is. My
It is a
work
federal
gets it
holiday.
all.
Yes.
Also gets it all.
Yep, it's a federal holiday. Yep.
So then, 18th.
And then. Yeah. I mean, we can also sit on this and let it wait a little bit more for the final day, but it might be good to start giving people information on this. It's unlikely we're gonna have another snow day. I say that in today's weather, Jaden pointed it out that was pretty unfortunate.
Well, and we may not have another snow day, but we might have another
If
weather related.
we could have a weather related to that.
I think this is another case where I would like to see the main group that this affects is besides the student educational piece, which personally I would question the amount of educational value of teaching school on June 17th. But yeah.
I think our teachers do a great job. They go all the way at the end. I think there's a huge amount of educational value for every day that we have education.
Okay.
Yeah.
all right, never mind. But I guess I would like to hear if there's an option for JRSSA to have some really good training
Mhm.
in that time.
Mhm.
That would be really valuable. So that's a piece as well. So maybe if we could get some more input for the next meeting.
Mhm. So to find out what can be done
What
in
could be
there,
done,
what can be
yeah.
done to make sure, what type of training.
Especially with the
And making
COVID-19.
certain that it is productive.
Yeah.
For everyone involved. Okay. All right, we'll do.
What would the people boots on the ground be recommending in this case?
So when we cut summer programs, that was for this summer.
Yes, the coming summer. After July 1.
So we might
There
wanna
may-
put
there may
all
be-
those days back in, have it go until September. I mean, we don't have any summer programming. This is. The reality of these cuts just keeps coming back and.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
Yep, and we're actively looking, I mean, we've already started budgeting for next year already for obvious reasons, and so looking at. Still looking at opportunities to save and see if maybe some of this, some things can be done. Summer programming that would be tough to bring back because it's too early within knowing what your budget would look like, but things like. 2 months into the year, you might find the ability to do some field trips and so forth that you otherwise, needed to remove. Yeah.
So we'll table the calendar, just for some more input. Sound
Okay.
good?
Great.
We should be prepared to vote at the next meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Either way. The 13th can be graduation. That's on there. Yeah.
That's
Because
the last day of preschool there.
that's the last day of pre-K as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the calendars starting this year and then this coming year as well will continue that kindergarten would. Happen the same time as all the other grades, starting and ending. Yeah. That used to be different
Yeah.
and that was shifted this year.
Serious.
Yeah. Matters those extra days. If,
All right. Let's open up to, if we're good with this conversation, let's open up to the second round of public comments, please.
Nothing? Just come to spend time with us? Yay! Thank you.
Great, let's go. Yeah, please just state your name and your residence.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello? Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Kathy Kozlowski from Ringe. I just have one quick question. Do we know when we will be doing the special vote in August?
Public hearing.
the public hearing.
Public hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have not set the calendar for the board at this point. And hopefully that would come at a regular board meeting attached to that as a special meeting. So generally, we meet the first and the third Monday nights, but we haven't set our calendar yet. And so that will be coming for a future meeting, and we will definitely be publicizing that.
How will that vote take place?
The question was, how will that vote take place? And there's two things. Were you able to get the name of the individual speak? Okay, just for our minutes, if she could repeat her name, that would be great. And then the question is, how will that vote take place?
Kathy Kozlowski.
Kathy Kozlowski.
Kozlowski.
Yes.
Of Ringe. Okay.
Ringe.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think we got that.
Okay, generally, Kathy, we actually don't answer questions during the comment time. I think if you wait and watch for our publications about the calendar, that will answer your questions.
Okay, I guess I'm just coming from the point of wanting to know that, given that it's summer and there'll be a lot of people on vacation, but we need to get as many people as we can to support this. So the sooner the information got out and the process that's used would be very helpful.
Thank you. Excellent point.
We can do that before the end of the school year.
Oh, it would have to be, yeah, because our July 1st is our new season, so we'd have to set our calendar well before that. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
If that's it for public comments, you sure? Nobody else online? Okay.
I sent it via email. I forgot to bring it up.
I sent you something via email. Get the trade off
Oh,
now.
trade off then.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
The board approved it at
Mm-hmm.
the last time, but because of the amount of the work,
Interesting.
they have to have a performance bond. And so
You want me to read?
to be,
Okay.
so
So let's go into board matters.
to allow that to happen here.
Yeah, so this falls into board matters.
Mhm.
We have a couple of things for board matters. The first is something that Ruben is going to tell us about, and if you wouldn't mind, can you put it up on the screen? You want me to share this back or not?
I can get it. Just let me hold this for a second
Okay.
and pull it up. Yep.
So as he's doing that, it's a message about our RCOM speaker system. It's a performance bond. So I'm doing that very badly already. So we are going to carefully put it up on the screen.
Yes, so basically at the last board meeting, the board approved to move forward with the bid from RCOM regarding all of the work, the safety work having to do with the speakers in all of the buildings, to make sure that sound is in every aspect of the facility. So, which was great. That said, the amount came in a little higher than what we had originally, budgeted for and because of our purchasing guidelines, we, or maybe even by law, but we have to have a performance bond as part of this. And so, in order to do that, RCOM would need to increase its bid by upwards of $6,300. So let me just show that information when I find it.
I can email it right back to you. Or just go to your sent to me.
Yep, sent to. Say. Send it out. Okay, so Mike was able to work with RCOM, the company doing the work. We've approved, and he indicated that RCOM was able to find a couple different agencies. One that quoted almost 5,000 for the performance bond, and one that quoted a little over 6,000. And so certainly, I think we want to go with the one that is lower in cost. The project cost is 153,000 is what we approved. And I think that it's over 150,000 means that we have to have this performance bond. So the request is that the board would be able to approve us going forward and including the cost of the performance bond up to $6,300 or $66,294.
What's a performance bond? I feel like I've never seen this before. I'm sure we must have.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this, the performance bond is kind of an insurance guarantee that the project will be finished. But normally the contractor would include that in his price. In this case, I think there was no indication that a performance bond would be
There was
needed.
no indication that a performance bond was needed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The original months ago, the original quotes came in quite a bit less than the 153. It was more like 130, 120s, which would not have required a performance bond.
And then what was it that drove it up over the 150?
Greater level of area needing to be served after they went through and walked through everything. It was very different than what originally had been thought. Not very different, but different enough where
Yeah,
there were
right,
quite a
we were
few
right
more-
at that
quite a few
threshold.
more fixtures that would need to be put into place. And it's possible, for instance, they're not going to replace anything that's already working. And so if at RMS, for instance, there are areas, speakers that maybe aren't working, but just because they're not hooked up properly, they'll do that. But if they can't, it's gonna, cost more to put a new item in. So it's possible that we won't end up paying 153,000. It might be maybe like 140,000, but based upon the area of coverage and assuming new product, it's going to be that.
Any more discussion? We'll take a motion.
I'd make a motion that we approve covering the performance bond.
Are you going with an amount?
Yes, not to exceed 6,500. I think that was the recommendation from Carrie.
Okay, yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Because we've already approved the work, now we're just approving the,
Yeah, the work can go,
Performance.
by doing this, we can keep everything on track.
okay,
Okay.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Vote yes.
And I think while Lisa's gone, we should resolve the committee assignments.
I'm all done.
Uh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yes,
for
thank you.
coming,
Good night.
spending the evening with us. Right, we did the committee assignments while you were gone. Yes.
Appreciate that. Sorry about that. May I? Do you need that anymore?
You can take it. This side right over here.
Okay. So back to the agenda. We now have committee assignments. Oh. Everyone's wrong, down wrong. So in this, I have them. I'm afraid to think something that big. Okay. So in the process of being a school board member, 90% of our job happens in committees. And I sent the board a document outlining our committees and when they currently meet. These are our current committees. we have some work to do in deciding who is going to be on what. And I would like to set our actual dates because we got such a late start this year. And I have mine, people. I'll take one. All right. Thank you. So, what I'd like to start with is a quick breath, because this is actually going to take us a little bit of time tonight. Are you serious, John?
What's that?
Are you serious? You getting me a halls too?
Would you like one?
He's got a stack.
I got a whole.
Oh,
stash of
okay.
things over here.
Okay.
It's like trick or treat.
All
Yeah.
right. So we're gonna take our time with this.
I need some water. I can get a cup.
I would love a couple of water.
Lisa, could I ask a question?
Mhm.
What, or there was a suggestion made earlier about having several of our current committees become committees of the whole. Are you gonna address that? Because that'll affect, obviously,
does.
the,
It
yeah.
does affect that. That is big conversations. So we're gonna take our time and do this, we're gonna do step by step. So, first step is, excuse me, sorry, guys. All right. So I have some suggestions to start with before we actually set our committees. One is that when we start having our meetings, that we set a few manageable short-term goals per quarter and then long-term multi-year goals, that we bring those goals to the board to have discussion. Because, and that sentence is, thank you, is important to me because I was feeling over the last couple of years, we've all had discussions of what's been happening in one committee that we really don't hear about. And even more so, kind of wonder, could they be doing this instead, or could they have gone this direction? And I feel like the whole board, like you said, John, like maybe consolidating some of these committees would make this more practical. But I think that the board needs a say in goals of committees, even if it's not our committee. I think that we should have some input, at least hear goals. And if you look at, let me just see here. So per policy BA, school board operational goals, this is our policy. Each year, the Jaffrey Ridge School Board will formulate goals and objectives. The goals and objectives may include, but are not limited to, the board functions of vision, structure, accountability, and advocacy. And the following areas of board operations and relationships are representative of those in which objectives may be set and progress appraised. So these are areas that we really want to be looking at for direction in each of our committees and what we're doing as a board. This is really the area that, this is our lane. Can I say it that way? Here's our lane. This is what we do. This is our role. Okay, and all of that's equal. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, we all know I love policy. Yes, it's number 2. Notice that. But I'm not saying it's better than everybody else's. I will say board member development, I would love to see more of. A board member orientation. I had a great couple hours with Judy this week, where we kind of.
Yeah,
did
that
board
was
member
really
one-on-one.
helpful.
That was great.
Yeah.
I wish I had gotten that.
Yeah, that was good.
That was fun. So these are areas that we really want to make sure each of our committees is really paying attention to, right? Then as let me just scroll down and just see if this one is yeah. So we wanted to, what we do want to talk about, and I would love to get some brainstorming tonight about these kind of goals. And then I just wanted to put this in policy BDD. So in preparation for my work with Judy this week to kind of do board, I read through all of our B policies. B policies is what the school board's role is. And BD, so this is all public stuff. Again, funny enough, policy making, primary function, same. And the delegation by the board of its executive powers to the superintendent provides freedom for the superintendent to manage the schools within the board policies and frees the board to devote its time to policymaking and appraisal functions. Superintendent is responsible for administration and the executive and the execution of board decisions, operation of school programs, keeping the board informed about school operations and issues. And the board shall annually evaluate the performance, which we do usually in June. So I just wanted to just kind of remind people, these are our lanes. This is where we are. And then if I go back to the board committees, what I'm thinking is something we had talked about before, where our board meetings don't have every committee speaking at each board meeting with a quick check-in, that we have a longer check-in, that we have something more comprehensive that we talk about at these meetings. And so maybe at the beginning of the month, the first meeting of the month, the board could hear from facilities and finance. And then the last meeting of the month, the board could hear from education and wellness, you know, depending on when these groups are meeting, but something more focused, not just, you know, something more elaborate that takes longer than the superintendent's report. Like, this is our work. And I wrote down policy doesn't need to be scheduled like that because the policy committee brings things forward as needed. So it's not, well, here's our discussion this week. It's, no, here's the policy we're bringing forward. So that's not something that we need to have scheduled. That's automatically scheduled in there. So I kind of did designate some things because you'll notice as I go up, that the manifest, I already put Lisa and Sandy in here because we both agreed. If anybody wants to change and take that over for me, that's perfectly fine. And then currently we have a legislative committee that we should vote to remove if that's something the board wants. It's not that the legislation's not important. It's that the legislation is moving so fast. There's no way we could have a monthly group say what's happening, like it's literally happening every day. The changes and what's happening legislatively. We need to all be really watching this closely and acting, you know, where we can. So I would ask us to make a motion to remove the legislative committee. I think that it's almost redundant, like that's something we all need to be on. That leaves, if we do that,
Can I bring
that
something
leaves
up,
these
Lisa?
4 committees.
Can I bring something up? We have had, and again, maybe we can decide its form going forward, but a communications committee. I'll say that,
I'm sorry I didn't put this in here. Yes.
that's all right. I think that to me, part of that discussion needs to, just put it on there. Maybe we can discuss it when it comes up.
Yeah. Do we approve the idea of, can somebody make a motion to get rid of the legislative committee?
I'll make a motion to remove the legislative committee from this year's, for next year's committees, school
All right.
board committees.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All approve?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That's a 606. So thank you so much for that. Okay, here we go. Love typing, okay. I should have put that one in, I'm sorry. All right. So. Let's talk about these committees that we have. Is there consolidation we want? I know that at Monadnock, for example, they actually combined their finance and their facilities committee because they felt that those two talked about each other all the time and really needed to consult each other all the time. And so they just felt like that was a natural progression to put those two together. I don't know if that's something we want to consider. We don't have to consolidate any of these, but it does make sense to me. So let's open it to the floor now. I've kind of said my piece.
Well, I don't know about combining the finance and the facilities committee. I think well, actually, I don't know what our plans are for facilities going forward. But so, there's a question mark in itself. Right. I love the idea of the education committee. The education presentations being given to the whole board, and so dissolving that committee and having that be more present and visible. It's obviously those presentations have been brilliant. And I've learned so much, and I understand that they're all on YouTube, but I'm gonna be honest, I have not watched many of them before. And so to have them to be in that committee this year and see them and be able to ask questions, that's been amazing. And I would love for our community to be able to participate in that as well. So I am definitely in favor of that. Maybe the finance committee.
Yeah.
That's trickier and also would involve. Well, like all of these, moving these to the evening means. Our administrators would. Have to be here and present in the evenings, and so that is an ask. As opposed to doing these committee meetings during the school day or shortly after.
May I speak to that? I was on the school board when the finance committee was a committee of the whole. And I think that it's there's some benefit to it. I think you'll still find that, certain people will gravitate towards some deeper dive into the finance issues. They'll spend more time with the spreadsheets, they'll get into them more deeply. But the discussions, at least everyone will benefit from. And looking back on when it was a committee of the whole, for me was, I should just mention, I started out as a member of the Budget Advisory Committee. And I did that for, I think it was 4 years before joining the board. And all during that time, it was a committee of the whole. I think there was a benefit to that. And yeah, you're going to have some meetings that are going to be longer, particularly in November and December. But yeah, the other thing, just the one last thing, I think it's natural that not everybody is into budgeting and finance, but by having it a committee of the whole, people become, more included.
You can ask the questions. Yeah, that's definitely true.
The reason I put this up is because in doing deep dives into the school board role policy and all that stuff, I finally read the articles of agreement that is on our website. And what reminded me, John, was what you just said about the Budget Advisory Committee, that there's different ways that we have options for dealing with our finances as far as bringing it forward to community. And in our articles of agreement, which is old, and it talks about how we, incorporate our district and our school board members, our community. Number 4, there shall be an advisory budget committee to consist of 2 members of the Board of Selectmen from Jaffrey and 2 members of the Board of Selectmen from Ridge, or their appointees, exclusive of school board members from each of the 2 towns in the district. I've never actually seen that. That was the first time I've seen anything like that, that there was a committee of two selectmen from each town that got together that had no relation to us that talked about, like, I've seen every once in a while, one person show up. But like, I
And I think that in part was related to the movement to a finance committee. Because those finance committee meetings were held during the day, they tended to move around a little bit, you know. In other words, the hour might change. And because it wasn't part of the regular school board process, I think that's contributed to the lack of members.
Well, if it would make our process more transparent, if we can educate more members of our community by making it what is your phrase that you use, a committee of
The whole.
the whole? I mean, it does make a lot of sense when you think about that and some of the issues that we've had over the last couple of years.
If we did that, we need to find a way to have it organized so that it's not a free-for-all. We were all throwing out, find this number and get this number and get this person, and we'd have to have somebody, I think, chairing it, like literally, you know, being the person in charge at our table of the finance discussion. And it shouldn't be the superintendent.
But once you make it a committee of the whole, that's a board meeting.
Yeah.
So you can do it a couple different ways. You can have a third meeting solely focused on finance, and it's just a third board meeting. You can have for instance, you can have a general board meeting. Like the first board meeting of the month is, you know, for all types of things. Second, you know, the second board meeting is the education board meeting. Third one's the finance committee board meeting. Or you could say, let's keep the two board meetings because you meet quite a bit. And the first one's going to be your general board meeting. The second one's going to be a blend between finance and education, because your whole board is present at that time anyway. And then it's the chair running that meeting.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I mean, everything does go together. And also, if the community has a problem with something we're doing and we present things to them as we're going along, they won't have this whiplash effect that they're mad about, you know, perceived wrongs or anything. They'll kind of have some input along the way and we'll all know about it. So maybe that would make things go more smoothly.
And although we've had committee calendars up, frequently those will change. We seldom have agendas up or minutes, like we're not following what we should be doing as a committee in setting agendas and having them up 7 days before and posting the minutes and, you know, so people do get confused. You know, when are you talking about this in finance? Well, we're not talking about it today, we're talking about something else. Like
Another iteration of what I said could be like, first board meeting of the month is your typical board meeting and education. The second one could be typical board meeting and finance
with focus.
with focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. So that would be a monthly finance conversation and a monthly education conversation.
Of the full board
Mhm.
in public with public comments, etc.
Yeah.
And I still think that they would need some kind of an agenda and some kind of a direction, so it's not a free-for-all. You
Well, I
know,
think you have your presentations, your goal, it would be based upon your goals that you were talking about.
so who would make the presentation? If we don't have a committee, a finance committee, who would make the finance presentation and set the agenda?
Carrie.
Well, I mean, I think that. Again, the agenda becomes the board agenda, and that's the school board. Chair. With the superintendent. That's,
Okay, with input from the board.
and you could have with input
And
from the board.
because somebody might say, look, we really have to look at test scores right now. So, okay, bring that to me, to Ruben, it becomes part of the agenda. Okay, I could see that. That's input about the school calendar. Tell them we tabled it.
Work phone.
All right, So here is where the discussion is going right now. To edit our school board meetings in such a way that we have focal meetings, and really delve much deeper into education and finance at these meetings. Where maybe the first meeting of the month is our business meeting. And the second, and where we bring policies for first reading, our wellness and communication initiatives, and our facilities, and then which facilities really goes into finance and education a great deal as well. So then the second meeting of the month becomes very little from the superintendent, very little from business. Quick consent agenda item things, but then we go really spend a great deal of time getting input from the education and finance people. Does that sound like
Yeah, sounds
a
good.
direction?
Then everyone knows what everybody's doing and we're all on the same page.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that is a really good way to make communication streamlined as far as getting stuff to the community. Put it where it already is. These are our meetings. All right. So that takes the education committee out of the running for a meeting date. That takes the finance committee. Now, what I could see easily happening is creating subcommittees at specific times of the year. So when we're getting to budget season, I could see a subcommittee for finance to meet more intimately with smaller groups to be able to really take, get assignments on finding things. Could be one way to do that. That I could see subcommittees coming out of this, but short-term ones, not full year ones. Does that sound like a model? Okay. All right, so finance committee, we're gonna take off of the table here. And I could see, especially this one, I could see this becoming a subcommittee when things get rough. But as far as heavy timing, when things move very quickly with the budget, I could see a subcommittee coming into play there. But I'll just put subcommittee. Okay. All right. Let's talk facilities.
You want to combine the finance committee and call it finance property committee?
I think if we keep finance as a whole body.
Yeah.
And just when we feel the need for a task group, then use it then. But do we need to wait on facilities until we have more information about the direction of facilities fiscally?
Yeah, because they don't want to give us any money for anything, not even a carpet for the library. I mean,
Right.
come on, man.
We're gonna meet and talk about all the stuff that we can't do.
Yeah, I mean, just as someone coming in looking at things,
No, I think it's
Over.
important to, despite the funding challenges, we need to continue to identify. To me, the job becomes even more important in order to kind of identify and justify
what needs
what
to
we
be
do
done.
need to do and make that clear. So, this is a good chance to do that. We don't have a lot in the budget obviously for next year, but it's going to be a big task in order to justify something in next year's budget. So that's what I see the focus of this committee doing, we have a list of projects. We know what needs to be done. We're probably going to have to do a lot of work to justify that and work with the finance committee, but I see the genesis of a lot of the inputs coming from the facilities committee. Obviously, they'll work in partnership, but I think that's first thought is that would be the real important role of that committee, and not necessarily day-to-day operations, which we shouldn't really be getting involved in anyways, but that forward-looking plan, capital improvements.
Good. Okay,
Yes, I think that you said that very well. I think that that's exactly what we should be doing. And, you know, we've, well, we've done some work to, you know, put together like the start of capital improvement plan. But I would have to say that Ruben and his staff have done more on that than the facilities committee has, and again, it's an educational tool.
And I think part of it too, not to get ahead of it, could be, with our funding challenges. I'm just gonna say, for example, right, we've had this whole report done on, what we could do with our athletic facilities. Want the money to have an engineering report done. We have kind of an à la carte menu of what we could do. We are doing none of it right now. I know that there's been certainly communication from the community through this budget crisis about, how they can help. That I see as a logical area where people could and would likely support things to do with, and I'll just throw athletics facilities around there, but, let's say we wanted, work done on the lower field or down at the track, things like that. I could see the, facilities committee working with maybe the finance committee on those sort of options. I just think we're going to need to do that sort of creative thinking and take advantage of this opportunity where we do have attention from the public. We do have people that want to help, and we need to enable them the opportunity to help. Like, here's what we recommend. And we can do some work behind that. And even if it's smaller efforts, for equipment and things like that, I think every little bit will count moving forward. And, those little bits could be very important to students, right? They're small things that we know need to be replaced that can go a long way, certainly in the community. I could think of 10 things right now that I could put off a list that would probably cost less than $100,000 that would make this, that would improve the student experience and their feelings about the school here. So that's the sort of thing we can do here. And I think the community would step up to help.
And
It's a
as
great idea.
brief aside, I have heard that there actually is now a Jaffrey Range Booster Club that has filed for nonprofit status, and they've had their first meeting, and they're looking for direction and goals and how best to proceed. So exactly what you're talking about. There are people out there who want to help.
excellent.
And I have met with that group.
Awesome. Cool. All right, so,
Talk about goals and things of that nature.
all right, so policy stays, facility stays, wellness. What do we want to do with wellness
Well, wellness, I think, is required. Right now.
as a committee?
Mhm.
Perfect. All right, and then communications.
So I led this committee this past year, pretty poorly, I'll say. But I think part of my struggle was, and maybe we can be sure we can address it now, or maybe it's just some more kind of initiation on the part of the chair, is that in the past, we had a communications coordinator, which helps, right? I think with a lot of these, right, if you take a look at the facilities committee, we have a facilities director that is doing this on a day-to-day basis and can take those maybe actions, albeit through Ruben, right? For the, finance committee, we have a finance director, wellness committee, we have somebody on staff here that kind of directs that. With communications, it becomes a little bit more difficult because that role is certainly a lot of people are doing communicating, but it's scattered. So I think that's where maybe it's just a conversation. I probably should have been brought it up before now. But going forward, if we're to continue that, like, who is a person on staff, right? Not just the school board talking about it, but I think there's a lot of opportunity with this one too, given the current situation, that could almost be like a communications / community outreach. Probably not the right word, but we could really use some community input on that
Community engagement.
engagement. Yeah, that's the kind of term I was looking for.
Confess, if nobody else is putting, I confess, I'm not sure the need for that outside of a directed subcommittee. I don't know that this is a monthly meeting need as much as when there is an initiative, when there is a direct need for it, then I think the board could say, if it's not something the board can do as a whole, then we could say, does anybody want to head this up and do this? So I'm thinking that this might, again, be a short term as needed committee rather than a monthly commitment.
It could also be a quarterly.
Yeah,
commitment, not a month.
we've been doing it quarterly.
I guess I'm still seeing it as an as needed. And if it's an as needed, then it can be something where we have a 2-month time frame that we want to get this initiative done. Who wants to be part of it? It doesn't have to be, okay, this is this person's job now. It could be, well, I'm available. I'd like to be part of this kind of thing. It can be more of an ad hoc kind of a thing.
That sounds good.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Fine with me too. But I do think that we need to have those task force. Moments.
Yep. So we won't get rid of that. We simply won't add it to what we need to assign ourselves tonight. Okay?
I do want to talk about one thing that I've been wondering about. And it is, and I don't think it would be a committee, but this might be a moment to talk about it. Or at least address it. I'm wondering if we should not have a homeschool, charter school liaison or committee, advisory board, some structure to incorporate and start to hear the concerns of the students who might be part-time students or whatever, students in our district who are not full-time students. How can we hear them? How can we get out to them that we have these fantastic classes that they can take and clubs and sports, but I mean, really, let's talk about the educational opportunities that are available to these students. So I just want to put that out there. I don't know what people think about that right now. I do feel like there is such a strong division right now. And it would be nice if it didn't get worse.
So that brings in a piece that I didn't want to go into tonight, but we definitely want to spend time with.
Okay.
So I had emailed that CAST report to everybody. I don't know if anybody's taken a look at it, but they
Yeah,
delve into that a
I
great
went
deal.
through it. It was pretty shocking. Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
it is. So for the public, what this is Messina School District last year dealt with a very similar cut to ours at their deliberative session. And that deliberative session got so socially ugly that they were really shocked. It was a very violent feeling meeting, apparently, from people who I've talked to. And what came from that is the school board chair, a man named Mitch Gluck, has a background in business organization, and he brought forth a business model to the community and the board, and they made a community action group of 22 people, and 15 of them stayed the course of the whole year, the whole 6 months. but they still had input from that whole, and it's a wide diaspora of people who were engaged in this. And they looked at what might have caused that kind of a cut to happen, what might have caused this kind of anger in the community, in a community that is so incredibly similar to ours. It's a mirror in this New Ipswich and Greenville community. And they finalized their report. They did this exhaustive 158-page report, and they finalized it and posted it on February 5th this year. And so as I'm saying this publicly, because I truly believe every person should be reading this report. It's right on their website in the school board news. But the similarities to what we are living, because this is our neighborhood, this is our neighbors going through a similar thing. But they do talk about how do we get that communication piece back in. But I think my hope is in our committees and individually that we will look at this report and learn lessons from it. I don't think we need to repeat. I don't think we could repeat this report. But there's so many, like I have this 2-page document of things that I've written down that I want to start looking at and really delving deeper into from this. So I hope that you guys really look at this report and take it to your committees and maybe help that direct some of your goal setting, because the lessons are immediate. They're right there. They're very, very valuable. So there's that piece. Okay. I don't have an answer, Christine, to that.
Yeah.
I know that we just reduced 24 positions. There's no person we could hire to do that.
No,
Like there's no, and
I'm
so
not
I don't know how
talking
to.
about that. I'm not talking about reflecting back on why this happened. I'm thinking about where do we go from here? And when you're in the community and you hear a homeschool parent that you've known for 15 years say the only thing they care about of the school district is sports, then it makes me realize that we have work to do. And when I ask the parent, does your child consider, are they doing as a homeschool child? Have they ever considered taking any classes? The answer is, well, I didn't know that was even an option. So I feel like we have some healing to do, and connecting some dots, and I'm not sure the right way to do it, but creating a space where people are heard and where they can present. Of course, anybody could come here, I know that, but this is a school board meeting, and people who are not in our school may not feel welcome to come here and voice their concerns. So
Well, I'll just put this out there because, my daughter's 35, so. But I know that during the COVID that I had friends that were getting very upset because your school is pretty conservative and balanced, but some of the schools, they were starting to call them indoctrination stations. And they felt like, there were, philosophies they didn't agree with that were going on. And I could see the anger in like the group of parents for school age kids just escalating. And you guys seem so, you feel just so balanced and old fashioned. I come in here and it's just like going back to being in elementary school in the 60s or 70s. But I think that that public education has gotten a bad reputation just because of some extremists that got out there and kind of poisoned the waters a little bit. So I know the people at homeschool, a lot of times they're conservative on a lot of things, and they just want to be able to, express their values to their kids. And I saw something on the news the other day that the State House wants to make it so health classes are required that show, the stages of life for a baby and things like that. And, I'm as conservative as possible, but I would not want to see that or to have my child or potential grandchild see it. So I think that the homeschool people are, a lot of them are coming from that perspective. And so they've got this preconceived notion of what it's like here, and it's not like that. So I agree with you, Christine, that it'd be nice if there was some sort of like liaison who could express what you're saying to the community. We can continue to talk about.
So I want to pause it here because I do want to be extremely careful that we're not stereotyping a group in our community. I homeschooled for 11 years, and this is not a community I would ever stereotype or label with any ideology. I think we absolutely want to keep communicating better. And honestly, I think if you guys read the CAST report, it has some really valuable direction on how to move forward. I really can't recommend that one enough. Let's go into actually placing names on these. We're going to place names on 3 committees now. That's what we've narrowed it down to. And
those committees are,
policy, right up on the screen, policy, facilities, and wellness. And we're going to keep communications up here, and we can put the names up here. We'll just keep the document. But until we have a direction for communications, I think that we should hang on to that one and not drive it.
I'm sorry, hang on to which one?
Communications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to, I know that this is a known thing, but wellness is really, it's not, it's mostly a committee of the administration and teachers, and we're just members of it, but it's not a board committee.
Yeah, and that's a committee that board members need to be on. And that's a committee that needs to meet during those times, which is one of the pieces of this, is that some of these committees actually have to meet during the school day.
But do we know when the wellness committee meets?
Usually at 3,
Oh,
3 in the afternoon, it's usually a Zoom.
Let's start with wellness. Who would like to be on the wellness committee? Judy.
I am happy to continue to be on the wellness committee.
Thank you, Christine. Anybody else? That's okay, we can come back to. All right. Facilities.
I was on that. I was happy to stay on that.
Okay.
I'm happy to be on the facilities as well.
John?
Who else?
Sure. I mean, I don't want to take somebody else's place, but yeah.
Well, we can have more than 3 people, and we're cutting it down dramatically. We should be on.
Well,
lots of
If
committees.
we have more than 3 people, I think we have the issue of it being a board meeting. Because there's a,
That's the confusion, because no, it's not a board meeting, but you are a board, like you're still meeting as, you can only have up to
the
3.
thing is, if you have 4, then you've got 4.
Yeah, okay, so 3, cool. All right. Policy,
You want to put your name down?
I was gonna fill in blanks.
You can fill in my name there, Lisa.
I'm gonna put Charlie there, he's been on it successfully. And since we're moving finance, so he can let us know later if he doesn't want to be on it, but I'll put Charlie there. And I am happy to be on it, if you guys cool with that.
That is your rodeo.
All right, so that puts Sandy at manifest and facilities. That puts Judy at wellness. And so that's it for now, Judy?
yeah, I have to see, we had a reorg at my company too, so I have to see how this fits in. I can get there during the day, but I want to see how much time it takes on. How it goes.
You will need to be on a committee, so we might do some restructuring if you find that you can't fit the time in.
Oh, I'm sure I can do the wellness, but I don't want to overextend.
Then you will be one of the first people called for communications, my friend.
And if that means using Facebook, I'm not allowed to make
No.
public statements. Okay, as long as it's not something that's
No.
social media.
No, no, no.
'cause-
It's, this is advisory. This is-
Okay,
this is
yeah, 'cause
organization.
in my company, I'm not allowed to make that
Okay.
kinds of.
All right, so then we have, Sandy, we have you those. Okay, Judy, you have that. Christine. I'm seeing you down for facilities and wellness. Okay,
You can put me on wellness, back on wellness too. So,
okay. Okay. There you go. And then John, you have facilities.
Yes, and I would hope to, even though finance is the committee of the whole, I would expect to kind of dig in on that as much as possible.
And I could see Charlie saying that as well.
Right.
All right. And I have manifest and policy. Okay, so nobody right now has 3, correct? Okay. All right, then, policy, I think, I'm perfectly fine keeping it first Thursday of the month and that, I can meet, that's an afternoon one at 4:30, we'll do 4 p.m. Facilities currently is 3rd Monday. Do you guys want to stay with that?
Yeah, and we moved to 11:30 though.
11:30 a.m.
Yeah.
And
That will
wellness,
still work for you, Christine?
all right, wellness, when do you guys want to meet?
Well, wellness is only required to meet 5 times a year. My understanding, so
Do you
we
want
have a
to?
meeting scheduled in May. But I don't know.
Yeah, the one in April was canceled.
Okay,
So Judy, I'll make sure that you get on that invite. And we do usually meet by Zoom, but you can always go in person.
Yeah, going in person would be fun.
all right. So then for the next board meeting, this would put conversations about education and conversations about finance on the meeting, and I would like to keep that because I want to go back to what we would talk about goals. And I think that if we can have conversations about what goals we want to set for education and finance for these group meetings. I know we want to be talking about scores and test scores and testing. There's things we want to definitely be putting our time into. We want to talk about timing of the budget and
Oh, 3:15,
and when that's going to
4:15?
start and how. to
Great,
get
okay,
meetings
Thursday, May
prepared.
15th.
So
May 15th.
I think if we can add that to the agenda for the next one,
Let me see
where
if I
we
can
can talk about
forward it to
education
you.
and finance as a board. I don't think we need to ask other people and yes. To meet and set agendas or anything. But if we could do that, does that make sense?
I think so.
Well. All right, back to. I have it right away.
Yep.
Yes, okay.
We had one other thing to do as
Yeah,
part of our
we do.
discussion. Which is, I would like to make a motion to give the superintendent hiring authority until the end of the fiscal year.
Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you. And is there discussion?
I sent it to you, Judy. Thank you.
Okay. Those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Abstain? So passes 600.
Vice Chair.
Could we have a motion to elect a board vice chair?
I move that Christine be the vice chair.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Abstain?
Is that abstain?
Oh, you can vote for yourself?
ultimately.
Not a compliment. All right, we need one more motion, people.
yes, the most important one. Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Judy, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Yeah, has the website been updated with the contacts yet?